Drawing an eye is easy, right? Just draw a fish shape, add a circle inside, and you're done. That's how most people learn to draw eyes. The problem is, that's not actually how eye works. And if you have been drawing eyes like this for years, you are definitely not alone. I used to do the same thing. But once you understand the simple mistake behind it, you will never draw eyes the same way again. So, before we draw eyelids, eyelashes, or anything fancy, we need to understand the eyeball first. And I know what some of you are thinking. Why draw the eyeball when you can't even see it? Think of it like this. Imagine drawing an object covered with cloth. Would it be easier if you knew what the object underneath looked like? Or if you were just guessing the shape? Exactly. When you understand the structure underneath, drawing becomes much more easier. And the same thing happens with the eye. Because eyelid, the folds, even the fat around the eye all wrap around the eyeball. So let's start with the eyeball. The eyeball is basically a white sphere sitting inside the eye socket. Think of it like a golf ball, just smoother and hopefully not flying towards your window. In the center, we have iris, the dark circular part of the eye, and inside the iris sits the pupil, which is even smaller. To estimate the size of iris, divide the center axis of the eyeball in half and draw a circle along the line. This gives you a very reasonable proportion. Now, here is something worth paying attention to. The position of iris often decide whether the eye looks natural or slightly creepy. When the eye looks to the side, beginner often just slide the iris towards the edge. But that's not really how it behaves. Instead, imagine invisible contour lines wrapping around the surface of eyeball. These lines help you see the eyeball as a three-dimensional sphere, not a flat circle. And once you start thinking of it as a sphere, placing the iris becomes much more easier. Now, here is another small detail artists often miss. In tilted view, the cornea and iris of the eye extend slightly beyond the eyeball. I am exaggerating it here just to make the idea clear. In reality, it only sticks out a little, but the little bit adds a lot of realism. And one final detail, the pupil doesn't sit exactly on the surface of the eye, it sits slightly inside the cornea. So visually, the pupil appears a little deep inside the eye. Small structural details like this are what make an eye feel believable instead of flat. If you have made it this far without clicking away to a cat video, that's a great sign because we are just getting started. I have got two more big steps coming up that you definitely don't want to skip unless you enjoy your drawing looking slightly off forever. You have probably seen this happen. An artist draw a gorgeous hyper-realistic eye, but then they stick it on the face and it suddenly looks like it's trying to escape towards the ear. It's like being a master at making cake frosting, but having no idea how to actually put it on the cake. I spent way too many years in that amateur arts club myself, which is exactly why I am adding this extra step. To keep it simple, your eyeball sits right in the middle of the eye socket. Think of the socket as a deep, slightly squishier cave in your skull. Most people think the eye is just sitting on the surface, but in reality, only about 1/6 of the eyeball is actually visible. The rest of it sits inside the cavity. Around the eye, there is also a whole team of muscles filling the gap and helping the eye move in different directions. And one small note for the perfectionist out there. There is actually a bit more empty space on the side closer to the nose than on the other edge. Nature likes to keep things slightly asymmetrical. Now we finally reached the part that makes the biggest difference. If you only remember one thing from this entire video, remember this next step. Because this guideline alone can fix most eye drawing mistakes. Let's start with the front view. As usual, begin with the eyeball and its center axis. On the inner side, the eye starts slightly outside the eyeball to make room for the tear duct. On the outer side, the eyelid ends almost exactly where the eyeball ends. Now, here is an interesting rhythm inside the eyelid. The highest point of the top eyelid and the highest point of the bottom eyelid do not line up horizontally. Instead, they create a diagonal rhythm. If you connect these two highest points, you will notice a slightly inward diagonal. This small guideline helps organize the entire eye structure. Another important detail is how the eyelid overlaps. The bottom lid tucks slightly inside the top lid, almost like a blanket tucked under another layer. And remember, eyelids are not thin line, they have thickness and volume because they wrap around the eyeball. Adding this thickness instantly makes the eye look more three-dimensional. Now let's talk about the iris placement. A useful rule is this: the bottom eyelid usually touches the iris but not cover it. The top eyelid, however, usually overlap the iris slightly. That overlap creates a relaxed, natural look of the eye. Without it, the eye can start looking surprised or slightly possessed. Once the lid are placed, we can add the fold above and below the eye, then give depth to the iris and the pupil, and finally add the highlight. The tiny spark makes the eye look alive. Without it, the eye just looks tired. Now let's look at the three-quarter view. This is where the structure becomes very clear. The diagonal rhythm of the eyelid becomes more visible, and the thickness of the eyelids starts showing the wrapping of the form. Drawing a center line along the eyeball helps show the depth of the structure. You can clearly see how the eyelids and folds wrap around the sphere. The eyebrow ridge, also known as the superciliary arch, extends outwards slightly to protect the exposed part of the eye. This becomes especially visible in angled view. And now come the view that most tutorials avoid, the side view. This is the view where you can instantly tell if someone understands the structure of the eye or if they are just copying the shapes. From the side, the wrapping of the form becomes very clear. You can see the thickness of the eyelid and the curvature of the eyeball much more easily. Because of that angle, the iris becomes extremely narrow and sometimes it's barely visible. But when you understand the structure underneath, drawing it becomes much more confident. And that's really the secret. Once you understand the structure of the eye, drawing it becomes much easier and much more believable. I hope this video helped you see eye in a completely new way, and hopefully it opens your eye a little too.